Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala wa ba'd. Okay, carrying on with Usool Al-Fiqh, we're going through the poem of Al-Waraqat. The poem of Al-Waraqat. Do we remember Waraqat? Al-Waraqat. What was the meaning of the word Al-Waraqat?
Pages.
Pages. It was the book on Usool Al-Fiqh by who? Imam Al-Haramain, who is? Huh? Huh? Not Jairawani. No. It doesn't matter what he was. Don't care if he's Ash'ari or whatever he is. What's his name? Come on. It was from Naysabur. Yes. Okay. Well, we can't remember. Al-Jawaini. Imam Al-Haramain Al-Jawaini. Abu Al-Ma'ali. Abu Al-Ma'ali Al-Jawaini. He was the teacher of Al-Ghazali. He was the teacher of Al-Ghazali. Even though Al-Ghazali is more well known than Al-Jawaini. And his books, Al-Ghazali's books on Usool Al-Fiqh overtook his teacher's books. Okay? So he outshone his teacher, Al-Jawaini. Both of them are Shafi'i. They're from the Shafi'i madhab. And both of them were Ash'ari. As he likes to mention, from the Ash'ari. Al-Jawaini, with regards to Aqidah, he was one of the foremost who revised the Ash'ari madhab. We have the Ash'ari madhab in Aqidah. Well, we've moved to Aqidah now. In Aqidah, the Ash'ari madhab began with who? Abu Musa, no, Abu Musa, Abu Al-Hasan Al-Ash'ari. Abu Musa Al-Ash'ari is from the companions. Radiyallahu anhu. Abu Al-Hasan Al-Ash'ari began the madhab after he left the Mu'tazila. Because he was, his mother married after his father died. One of the Imams of the Mu'tazila. So he ended up studying the Mu'tazili madhab from his stepfather. And he spent 40 years learning the Al-I'tizal. Who are the Mu'tazila? No, but who are the Mu'tazila? The rationalists. Their whole thing is the intellect is given precedence over everything. So if the Sharia comes with something that doesn't conform to our intellect, then the Sharia is wrong. And we have to find a way around the Sharia. Okay? And the purpose of that was, why do you think they said that? That our intellect, if the Sharia goes against the intellect, then there's something wrong with what the text of the Sharia, and we need to find a way. Why was the reason behind that? There's a reason. It's not just they just woke up one day and decided that that's going to be our way. Huh?
I think the reason was that because Allah created, the religion is for the human beings to understand it. So if they're,
Close.
Is it because of the philosophy that...
It's to do with philosophy, but what's the reason behind it? You're right, it's to do with philosophy. No one? I've said it before many times. How did we understand the truthfulness of the Prophet? With our intellect. Yes? Through rational thought and intellectual thought, we understood the truthfulness of the Prophet. Now, if the Prophet comes with something that goes against our intellect, and then we have to delete our intellect, that means we have to delete it from the beginning. So that means we have to delete everything that we built upon it. So we have to delete the fact that the Prophet is truthful. Okay? That was there. Did you get that? So our whole belief that the Prophet ﷺ is telling the truth is based upon our intellect. If we have to now delete our intellect, because the Sharia doesn't make sense to us, that means we have to delete it from the beginning. And therefore the Prophet ﷺ isn't a prophet. Okay? Based upon that, we have to give precedence to our intellect over what comes from the Sharia. That was their whole thought. And that's why they denied many things. And they twisted things. So Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari spent about 40 years studying i'tizal, and then he decided that it was wrong. Okay? He decided it was wrong, and he came up with what is now known as the Ash'ari Creed. Yes? However, he left that as well. After a period of time, after him realizing, basically it was Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari went from the Mu'tazila, went to a middle path, trying to get to the Sunnah. Yes? He's trying to find that was the truth. So he went to this middle path, and then he left that to another path, which was the way of Ibn Kullab, al-Kullabiyya. But he never actually made it to the way of Ahl Sunnah. He came close, but he never actually made it to the way of Ahl Sunnah. However, in his intermediate, when he was Ash'ari, he was the closest to Ahl Sunnah possible, from a group which is not upon Ahl Sunnah. That's why we say even today that the Ash'ari are the closest of the groups, and the Maturidiyya are the closest of the groups to Ahl Sunnah. Because in general they affirm the 6 pillars of faith. In general they affirm the 6 pillars of faith. Whereas all the other groups don't affirm the 6 pillars, they have their own pillars. Like the Mu'tazila have their 5 pillars. They don't have 6 pillars, they have 5 pillars, and they're nothing to do with 6 pillars at all. Okay? So generally the Ash'ari and the Maturidiyya affirm the 6 pillars. They have a problem in each pillar, but in general they affirm it. That's why there's a statement that they are from Ahl Sunnah in general sense. In the general sense, Ahl Sunnah is made up of Ahl Sunnah, the Ash'ari and the Maturidiyya, in a general sense. But in a specific sense, they're not from Ahl Sunnah, because in each issue of Aqidah they have a problem. After Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, he went through a new phase where Baqilani, who was from the Malikiyya, who took over and revised the madhab. Yes? We're just talking about Aqidah now, because he brought it up. So, he revised the madhab and changed certain things. Then Al-Jawaini came right at the end. Yes? And was the third reviser of the madhab, where he took it from Abu al-Hasan wanted to get away from the Mu'tazila. Al-Jawaini reverted it back to the Mu'tazila. So it became, the Ash'ari became very close to the Mu'tazila in most of their beliefs. So Al-Jawaini is blamed for this. Rahimahullah. May Allah have mercy upon all of them. But he brought it back to the Mu'tazila. And that's the madhab of the Ash'ari that remains today. Not the madhab of Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari. The Ash'ari of today believe, we wouldn't say it, but if they read the works of Abu al-Hasan, they would say he's a deviant. Okay? Because he affirms things they don't affirm. Especially about the Quran and about Allah's names and attributes. He affirms things they don't affirm. That's why when Ibn Taymiyyah discusses, when he refutes the Ash'ari, he refutes them by quoting Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari. And he says, look at you people. You claim to be following Abu al-Hasan, but look what Abu al-Hasan said. He affirmed this, and he affirmed this, and he affirmed this, and you guys are denying all of this. He affirmed Allah speaks, and the Quran is Allah's words. And you're denying that the Quran is Allah's words. Okay? And Allah is above His throne. Abu al-Hasan affirmed Allah is above His throne, Jalla wa ala, in a way that befits Allah. Whereas the madhab of Ash'ari now is no, Allah is not above the throne. There's nothing above the throne.
Verses, how they explain those ones?
They explain, you tell me, how do they explain where Allah says, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa? The most merciful rose above the throne, the literal translation. How do they explain that away? Because they say there is nothing above the throne. There is no God above the throne. There is the throne and nothing.
They believe on the throne.
They believe there's a throne. And the throne is above the 7 heavens. Okay? However, there's nothing above it. There's no Rabb. Allah is either everywhere, one of the beliefs, or Allah is neither here nor there. Meaning he's not in the world and not outside the world. He's not in existence and he's not in non-existence. These are the two beliefs of the Ash'ari. How does it work? Huh?
Like Christians.
You either you exist or you don't exist. No, there's a third one. Well, you don't exist and you don't not exist. Okay? So these are the beliefs of the Ash'ari. But how do they get away with the verse? Ar-Rahmanu ala al-Arsh istawa. Come on, we've dealt with this. What do they say? They say al-istila. Allah says istiwa, they say istila. Istila is the word means to conquer. Allah conquered the throne. Okay? Allah didn't rise. Istiwa is meant by istila. Istiwa means to rise. But istila means to conquer. When you say such and such conquered such and such a place, what does that mean?
It belonged to somebody else.
Ah.
And then
Yes.
you took it over.
When you conquer something, it belonged to somebody and then you took it. Yes? That's what it means to conquer. So they're saying the throne didn't belong to Allah. It belonged to somebody else.
You mean there was some other.
And then Allah overpowered that somebody else and took it. Okay? Is there anything in the universe that doesn't belong to Allah? Is there? Everything belongs to Allah. So how can there have been something that didn't belong to Allah and Allah took it? And who is this other one that it belonged to that Allah, before Allah conquered it, Allah didn't have power over? Okay, who is it? Does that mean we declare them disbelievers for saying this? No. Because they have a ta'wil, they have a interpretation, they have some reasonings behind it which cause them to say this. And they don't understand they don't see the reality of what it leads to. It leads for you saying that there is other aliha, there's other gods besides Allah. Then Allah became the supreme God by conquering them. That's what it actually implies. But that's not what they mean. They don't mean this. They only say this to free Allah of being like the creation. Yeah? Because we do istiwa, according to them. We rise and we go down and we do all of these things. Yeah? And Allah is not like His creation. So they wanted to what? Free Allah of being like His creation. But by doing that, they went astray. Okay? I was going to say something and I forgot. Alright, coming back to Usool Al-Fiqh. We got to Al-Fasid and Al-Batil. Yes? We were dealing with Al-Fasid and Batil. So we had As-Sihha or As-Sahih. Then we had Al-Fasid and we had Al-Batil. Sahih was when, with regards to worship, when it's done correctly. What does that mean when it's that the worship has been done correctly? The obligation has been lifted and you're not asked to repeat it. That's what it means for it to be correct. It's got nothing to do with if you're going to be rewarded for it or not. Remember, in fiqh or Usool Al-Fiqh, we're not dealing with reward from Allah. Okay, we're not dealing with that. We're looking purely on a legal sense. What does it mean? Okay, whether reward or not, that's a different issue. Depending, like for example, somebody prays a prayer, yeah, and the prayer is correct in the terms of legally, yeah, it is correct, but the person has no reward for it. Because his mind or his heart or his concentration was not in the salah. He's thinking about what he has to do next. Yes? Yeah? So the reward is connected according to the salah, or in regards to the salah, is connected to how much you are there in the salah. That's the reward connected. That's what Prophet ﷺ said. That person prays and perhaps he only receives from his prayer half of it, or a quarter of it, or less, and the Prophet went down to about 1/10 of it. Okay? Because it's connected to how much you are actually in the salah. However, somebody whose mind is totally out of the salah, but he does all of the actions that are needed for the salah. Okay? His salah legally is valid, is sahih. Meaning the obligation is lifted from him. Yes? And meaning he doesn't have to repeat it. That's what it means. Reward, we're not concerned with the reward. So, if it's fasid, what does it mean then? One is, the obligation hasn't been lifted. Second is, he must repeat it. Okay? So that's what it means with regards to ibadat. With regards to mu'amalat, it has a slightly different meaning. What was mu'amalat? We have ibadat and we have mu'amalat. Ibadat are the worships. What are mu'amalat? The transaction or the dealings. Because you can have, it can be business or it could be family. Or it could be jihad. All of these are dealings. Even though jihad is between the two. Between ibadat and between al-mu'amalat. Because it has a side of that and a side of that. Okay? That's why some of the scholars, after they deal with ibadat in fiqh, they bring jihad before they go into mu'amalat. And some scholars, no, they leave jihad to the end. Okay? So, in mu'amalat, it's slightly different. What does it mean to be sahih? So what do you think in mu'amalat, what does it mean if the transaction is sahih? It's acceptable. Okay. It's valid. What does that mean? Okay, it's valid. What does that mean? You don't normally repeat transactions. It's halal? Kind of, yes. What? Huh? It has to, for it to be sahih, it has to not be against the Sharia. No, it's got nothing to do with rewards. We're not talking about rewards.
It's binding.
It's binding. Okay, what does that mean? It's binding. What does it mean if it's binding? Meaning?
If it's correct, then.
Meaning everything that it entails is fulfilled. Meaning that, especially when a transaction, meaning the ownership is transferred. Yeah? Especially when you're selling something to someone. If the transaction is correct, then it's valid and the ownership of that thing that was being sold is transferred over. With regards to marriage. Yeah, everybody loves to talk about marriage. Okay, with regards to marriage. If the nikah is valid, what does it mean? If it's sahih, what does it mean? The ownership of the woman is transferred to you? The women are going to be upset. Huh? What does it mean? Come on, tell me, what does it mean? Yeah, the father's given it. All the conditions are met. It's sahih.
You live together.
You don't have to live together. It's possible for you not to live together. You can take her away. It means that now each party is halal for the other.
Yeah.
Okay? And the woman is now deserving of the mahr. Okay? And the man now becomes her wali. And remember, the father was the wali. Yes? Once the marriage contract is done, he's no longer wali. The husband is now her wali. Woman always has a guardian, always has a wali. For her whole life, she has a wali. The wali moves from father to husband. To, if the husband dies, perhaps children. Yes? To the sons, and so on. If she divorces, then the wali goes back to the father. The father and her. She has more say now after she's been divorced. She has more say in her marriage than before. Why is that? Why do you think that is? Why do you think at the beginning, I know this has nothing to do with Usool Al-Fiqh, but in the beginning, before she's married, ever has any relationship with any man, the father has more say over her in the Sharia and who she marries than if she's been married before.
Father has more experience.
Huh?
Father has more experience.
father has more experience
In the beginning.
in the beginning,
Yeah.
and the woman has none.
Yeah.
And so she can be easily deceived. That's why the wali is put there. Okay? After she has experience with men, and she knows the good and the bad, especially the bad, after being divorced. Then the Sharia lessens it, that now she knows. So it gives her more right now to decide. And the father has less say over her.
So she doesn't need a wali.
No, she does need a wali. But the father has less say over her. She could bypass him. He would still have to agree to the marriage, but she could. It's easier for her to get the marriage done. Whereas without, in the first time, it's very difficult for nikah to be done without the wali, except for the Hanafis
The father isn't there.
and the Malikis, and some of the Maliki as well.
If the father isn't there, she has full right.
If the father is dead, then the wali moves to somebody else. There has to be a wali. According to the majority, there has to be a wali in the marriage. Apart from the, I said, the Hanafis, there's a reason why they say it. It's based upon the hadith, as I mentioned. I think I mentioned in some of the WhatsApp. There's some dispute on the authenticity of the hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ is supposed to have said, any woman who marries without a wali, then her marriage is invalid. Her nikahu wa batil, nikahu wa batil, nikahu wa batil. That her marriage is invalid, her marriage is invalid, her marriage is invalid. There is a dispute whether the hadith is authentic or not. So when we attack the Hanafis, like everybody loves to attack them, they have right in what they say. There's a difference of opinion on the hadith. Also, who narrates the hadith? Anybody know? Aisha radiallahu anha. She married a female relative of hers without the permission of the wali. Her brother's daughter, her brother Rehman was in a battle. Yes? And she married off his daughter. He had no idea. She married off his daughter. Then he came and he realized, oh. And he said, so she said to him that I did this. He said, you are our mother. Whatever you do is fine. So in the end he gave permission. But she married her off without wali. So there are lots of details within it. But the majority of the ulama say that the wali is necessary. Okay? So just because the Hanafis say what they say doesn't mean they're saying it for no reason. There is reasons behind it. And some of the Maliki agree with them. Okay.
There's a verse in the Quran as well that if the husband passed away after that, لَيْسَ عَلَيْكُمْ جُنَاهٌ فِي مَا فَعَلْنَ فِي أَنفُسِهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ
Yes.
وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرٌ.
Yes.
So this here giving the permission to the woman what they do.
No.
That's not.
No, that's to do with the iddah. That the women are more knowledgeable about when the iddah ends or starts, when it finishes. It's not to do with marriage. So they are more knowledgeable, and when they decide that their iddah is over, their statement is given precedence over anybody else's. Yes? So she has an iddah period after her husband dies. How long? 4 months and 10 days. Okay? She knows best when that is up. Yes? No one else knows. So if she says, that's it, it's over, you can't say, no, I'm sorry. You need to wait a little while longer. No. She's ready to marry. In some cases, she could marry before that. When is the case where she could marry a woman, her husband dies, and within a few days she marries? After she gives birth. Because a birth is another iddah. So if her husband left her pregnant and died, as soon as she gives birth, khalas, she is ready to marry. If she wants to. Not in our day and age. In our day and age, things are much more difficult. In the times of companions, radiallahu anhu, they were very quick. They wouldn't leave any woman who was divorced or widowed Except straight away somebody would marry her. Perhaps not her first wife, perhaps her second wife, third wife, fourth wife, whatever. But again, this doesn't happen nowadays. Women sit women sit without getting married because nobody would approach them because they've been divorced and that's it. There's a taint against their name. Also, especially if they have children, nobody wants to take on the responsibility of somebody else's children. Yes? Widows, even worse. Yes? But the Sharia wants these women to be looked after. The other reason is they don't want, they have too much freedom. They don't want another husband. They're happy to. The first one is gone. The first one is lifted from them. Yes? So they don't want to. So Allah understand. That's why there's so much fasad. Especially even in the Muslim world. So much fasad. Some of the women say, I prefer my husband to go and commit zina than to take another wife. Yes? They prefer it. They prefer their husband to go and do haram than to allow them or to accept halal. That's the situation we're in. Anyway, that's got nothing to do with Usool Al-Fiqh. Okay, so we were talking about. So if the marriage is fasid, yes, or batil, what does that mean?
You have to fix it. Or
We're not dealing with fixing. What does it mean if it's fasid or batil? What do we mean by it now?
it's not sahih.
It's not correct, which means
It's not valid.
it's not valid, which means
They cannot live together.
they are not halal for each other. She does not deserve the mahar. Yes, because same thing as in a transaction. The ownership has not been transferred. Yes, the original owner still owns whatever he was selling. Transfer has not happened. So that's the difference between sahih and fasid or batil with regards to ibadat and muamalat. There's a difference, yes? With ibadat, it's to do with what? Everybody's going to sleep. I want to make sure you understand it. With regards to ibadat, sahih and fasid means what? The obligation is lifted if it's sahih and there's no repetition of the action. Whereas in transactions, the sahih and fasid is
The possession as transferred.
is that which is connected to that transaction with regards ownership and so on. Okay, we were on we mentioned how some things which are fasid can be corrected according to especially the Hanafis and then also the Hanbalis and others. Certain things can be corrected. I think we mentioned that. Is that right? Yes, we mentioned that. We mentioned that to do with Hajj and to do with marriage.
Discussing marriage. Batil and fasid.
Then we moved on to a second point that Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen mentions, is can we deal with things which are fasid? Can we have dealings between us on things which are fasid? Or can we delve into things which are fasid? For example, is it allowable for us to pray a prayer which is fasid? How does your prayer become fasid?
Praying it before it's time.
Praying it before its time. Okay? A prayer prayed before its time. Say you want to pray Dhuhr and you pray Dhuhr at 10 o'clock. Dhuhr hasn't started, yes? Is it allowable for you to do that?
I have a question.
You have a question? First answer my question. Then you can have a question. What do you think? No, you can't, of course, because it's fast. And you're making fun of the Sharia. Yes? Doing things. For example, somebody prays without wudu. With the intention of praying without wudu. His prayer is fasid, yes? But it's also making fun of the Sharia. Making a mockery of the Sharia. Okay? Yes, your question, what was it?
Which is better? Is it to pray a bit earlier, 5-10 minutes earlier, so that you don't miss the salah, or is it better to leave? Say, for instance, you're going somewhere, you can't catch the salah.
What do you mean can't catch the salah?
You'll be able to pray the salah.
You won't be able to pray the salah?
Yeah, let's say you're at work and they don't let you to pray salah, right?
Why won't they let you to pray the salah?
Let's just say, hypothetically speaking.
Yeah.
And then they won't let you pray salah. Is it better for you to pray a bit earlier? If you give you time, or you pray a bit late afterwards with the other?
You can't pray a prayer before it begins. It's not. It's unacceptable. It's a facet salah, meaning the obligation is still on your head, and you have to repeat it. Okay, so you need to pray it within its time period, but in necessity you can combine two time periods, Dhuhr and Asr period time, as one period. So you can pray Dhuhr and Asr within that period time until Maghrib. Yes, if there's a necessity for it. Same thing with Maghrib and Isha. Okay, so you can pray, hopefully. Problem is the winter months, yes? Where Dhuhr starts, what time does Dhuhr start? Just before 12? Yeah? And Asr starts just after 1:40, 1:50, something like that. And Maghrib is just before 3, just before 4, yeah? So the time is very small. So what do you do at work? You'd have to pray between the 12 o'clock to the 4 o'clock. You have to pray somewhere between that. Both of the salawat. If you can pray them within their each individual time period, then that's what you must do. If you can't, then at the very least they should be combined. Full prayer, meaning you don't shorten the prayer, because you're not traveling, yes? But you combine the prayers. And this is the opinion of Ibn Abbas, radiallahu anhu. Okay, and he gives a hadith for it as well. Okay, anything else? No. Okay, so that's to do with ibadat. What about mu'amalat? Can you transact with each other in mu'amalat which are fasida? Huh? Really? Yes? Okay. I lend you £10 and you need to give me £20 back. Now this is a transacted facet. Can I do that? Yes or no? Okay. If I do it, okay, I'm sinful. Yes? Is that transaction valid though?
Yeah, it is valid. Because if both parties are agreeable.
No, it's not valid.
Sharia.
The Sharia will not take into account your acceptance of it. Because you've accepted something haram. So even the transaction itself is invalid. And you're sinful for doing it. So you can't deal with anything which is fasid. You can't be involved in anything which is fasid. Okay, that's what the Shaykh mentions there. That anything in which there's a fasad in it, then you can't delve into it. You can't be party of it. Whether you're happy to or not. Otherwise, everything would be depending on how I feel. Today I feel like getting involved in riba and accepting riba. Tomorrow I don't feel like it. Yes? No, the Sharia doesn't work like that. Then the Shaykh mentions another issue connected to this. And he says, if a person does an action or a transaction in which there is a difference of opinion, whether it's allowed or not allowed, believing that it is allowed, do we deal with him in the same way we will deal with the one believing that it's not allowed? Do you understand that? So somebody's doing a transaction with somebody else. Yeah? That transaction there's a difference of opinion on. The person who's doing the transaction believes or takes the opinion that this transaction is acceptable. Do we deal with him in the same way as the one that believes that the transaction is not allowed?
No, it's different.
No, we don't. The one who believes is allowed, is doing something in his belief that is allowed, and he has proof for it being allowance. When somebody believes that it's not allowed and then does it, is doing something sinful which he believes to be sinful. These two people are not the same. Yes? These two people are not the same. So when there's an issue where there's ikhtilaf and somebody's doing something which he believes that is allowed, it's not for you to deal with him as if he's literally doing something haram. But does that mean that you can't tell him that what you're doing is wrong? For A, B, C, D reasons. Huh? Okay, so the issue is, the thing that the person's doing is an issue of difference of opinion. You believe it's wrong. He believes it's allowed. He's doing it. Can you advise him not to do it?
Yeah.
Of course. It's incumbent upon you to advise him. Yes? Al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. That you order the good and forbid the evil. Can you force him? No. That's the difference. You can't force him. You can give him your advice. You can give him the opinions. You can tell him why what you're saying is correct. Yes? But in the end, you can't force him. Whatever he or she does is up to them. And they will have to face Allah for it.
What if it's like your spouse or your
No, spouse is easier. Wife is easier, not spouse. Wife is easier. Wife has to obey her husband.
And what about
Not that she wants to. Illa man rahim Allah. But the wife, husband has rights over the wife. If he says you can't do this, then she can't do that. The other way is not the same. So if she says to you, you can't do this, then you don't. Then that's an advice. Even though it's an order from her, but take it as an advice. Okay, she can't force you, but you can force her. Does that answer your question?
and what about her children? Like his children, like what if they're doing something?
Children, yeah, you can, especially when they're younger, you can force them.
Older.
When they're older, it's more difficult. They should obey you.
Yeah.
They should obey you, and if you tell them, then they should. But children don't listen. Yes? Children think they know better than their parents. Yes? The parents here know what I'm saying. Children think they know the best until they realize no, they were wrong. But sometimes they have to make the mistake, and you have to let them make it. Yes? True? Sometimes no matter how much you tell them that this is wrong, and the end result is going to be bad, they won't accept it from you until they find that it's wrong themselves. Yes? And then you say, I told you so. Anyway, yes, you had a question.
Let's say there's a situation you saw someone wipe over their shoes
Yes.
and you hold the opinion that if you take it off, it breaks the wudu. But you know that there's a difference of opinion. That person is the imam. Is your prayer valid?
Yes. If the imam believes that his prayer is valid, then anybody behind him their prayer is valid. Okay? If the imam believes that his prayer is valid, then anybody who prays behind him, then their prayer is valid.
If another way, if Imam believes his prayer is not valid, and the people behind it is valid,
If the imam believes his prayer is invalid, then everyone's prayer is invalid. If they know.
No, the difference, you know the difference, is a difference of opinion.
No, then he believes that it's valid.
No, say we missed the middle tahashud, and he
The
did the
shahud,
salam,
okay.
the shahud,
Mm.
and did a salam,
Excellent.
and he says that it is invalid, they'll repeat the salam, and then I say that you don't have to repeat, you only have to do the sahab, and he say no, the prayer is invalid, because he made the salam and he got out of the salam.
You should do.
So I had to repeat with it. I repeated it.
That sounds like, yeah.
That was silly.
You'd have to repeat it with you do, not to cause any problem. But yeah, if he did sajda to sahu, that would be enough. But he didn't want to do it. Okay, so what can you do? Just agree with him. Agree with him or disagree with him. So yeah. But if the imam's prayer is valid, or he believes it's valid, then the people praying behind him are valid. But if you believe that the imam's prayer is invalid, then you can't pray behind him. If you believe that the Imam's prayer is invalid, then you can't pray behind somebody you believe their prayer is invalid. Yeah, okay. There's one Shaykh mentioned this example. He said there were a group of them, and they had a meal, and the meal was camel meat. Yes, camel meat. So of course the Hanabila believe that you have to make wudu after eating camel meat, and the ahadith are quite clear on the issue. Yeah, but the majority of the ulama don't believe that. They believe that these ahadith are abrogated. Okay, so the majority believe that ahadith are abrogated. The Hanabi believe that they must make wudu. So the Imam, they were going to pray. So the Imam got up and prayed, led them in prayer without making wudu, while the rest of them, or the one who's mentioning the story, made wudu. Okay, and he was thinking, but the Imam hasn't made wudu. Okay, and I've made wudu. Okay, so the Imam is praying without wudu, but I'm going to pray behind him. Okay. So he prayed behind a man that he thinks doesn't have wudu. And then afterwards he asked the Shaykh the question, okay, you prayed without wudu, your prayer is not valid. He said, well, if my prayer is not valid, your prayer is not valid. Okay, because you can't pray behind somebody whose prayer is invalid. Okay. So he said, okay, my prayer is not invalid, but he said, but my prayer is valid. Why? Because I believe that you don't need to make wudu. Okay. So my prayer is valid, but your prayer is invalid. Because you prayed behind somebody believing that his prayer is not valid. So get up and pray again. So make sure your Imam, you believe that your Imam's prayer is valid. Okay. We had Umar radiallahu anhu who led the people in prayer, Fajr, believing that he had made wudu and he was pure. And then when he went back, he realized he had ihtilam, a wet dream, but he didn't take a bath. He hadn't realized until after the prayer. So, what did he do? He took a bath and repeated his prayer, but didn't order anybody else to repeat the prayer. He didn't make an announcement, everybody come back to the masjid and pray again. Why? Because he believed his prayer was valid. And they believed his prayer was valid. So their prayers are valid. His prayer only became invalid when he realized what? That he was not upon tahara. But everybody else's prayer was valid. Because they prayed behind the Imam, believing that his prayer was valid. That's the main thing, that you pray behind the Imam, believing that his prayer is valid. Okay?
I have a question. So the white the tajweed is not good.
That's not a problem. As long as he doesn't make a total mess of it, it's not a big problem. As long as he doesn't change the meanings and make shirk with Allah, it's valid. As long as his Fatiha is roughly. I've prayed behind people that you think, in Saudi, you think, what is he saying? I'm sure that's not Fatiha. He's making it up as he's going along. Some of the old guys, you can't tell what they're saying. Like that. Don't know what they're saying. But that's the best they can do. Like one Shaykh in Tajweed, he was saying, a person came to read to me a Fatiha. Every time I was telling him alayhim, he would say alayhum. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. He would say alayhum. Alayhim. He couldn't say alayhim. It was impossible. And then he said, Alhamdulillah, Allah revealed the Quran in more than one recitation, because there is alayhum. There are recitations with alayhum. So you just read the way you are reading. Same as getting the sin, the sad. Some people can't get the sad, and they only get a sin. Yes? There is a recitation when the sad is a sin. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. There is a recitation of Ibn Kathir from Busy, Al-Busy. He's always busy. His name's Al-Busy. Some people can't say ta. Anybody here can't say ta? There's a recitation where the ta, no, again sad, not ta, sad. Sad, they can't say sin or sad, they say za. There's a recitation like that. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. Okay, Allah made it easy. And there's a narration from Ibn Mas'ud where he mentions, I can't remember the narration totally, but he mentions that the most important thing of the Quran is for you to understand it and act upon it. And the tajweed is secondary. And he mentions that even in his time, the tajweed started to get lost. People started to recite without tajweed. And Ibn Mas'ud didn't see a big problem with it. As long as they, what? Understood and implemented the Quran. Now we have, what? We have tajweed overboard. Tajweed overboard. Yes? But we have no acting of the Quran. Yes? The acting of the Quran and understanding the Quran is not there. But you sit there and sway your head, Subhanallah. And he's talking about being thrown into the hellfire. Somebody says, Subhanallah. Allahu Akbar. No. So, no. Why did we talk about that? Anyway, coming back to what we were talking about. Usool Al-Fiqh. He mentions an issue to do with it's connected to what we were first talking about, doing an action where there's a difference of opinion on whether it's halal or haram. He mentions the issue of a woman covering her face. Okay? So he says the issue itself is an issue of difference of opinion. Yes? The majority opinion is what? That the woman doesn't have to cover the face. That's the majority opinion of the fuqaha, especially the fuqaha of the mutaakhirin, the later. There's a dispute whether the salaf themselves, what was their opinion as a majority. But the later fuqaha, the majority said that she doesn't have to cover her face. The face and the hands are not from awrah. Yes? We know they're not awrah in salah. In salah, they're not awrah. There's a dispute on the feet. The Hanafis believe that the feet are not from awrah, whereas the rest believe feet are from awrah. So the woman needs to cover the feet. And Ibn Taymiyyah said at the very least, what is incumbent is that they cover the tops of the feet. Whereas the bottoms of the feet are, you don't need to cover, they're not from awrah. Okay, so these are the opinions. Okay. So the majority is the face is not from awrah and the hands are not from awrah. But he says in certain places the people all have agreed on one opinion. Yes? For example, the opinion in Saudi is that a woman must cover her face. Yes? And women generally, the Saudi women generally, don't uncover their face. They might uncover everything else, but they won't uncover their faces. Strange, very strange. You might find women in Saudi wearing a niqab, yes, and headscarf, and tight jeans, yes, and tight top, but they won't uncover their face. Okay, it's very strange. Okay, perhaps if they uncovered their face, it would be less of a fitna. And if they cover the rest of their body, it would be better. But Saudi is a strange place. It's full of contradictions. So, but the opinion in Saudi is that the woman must cover her face. Okay? So, a woman who goes to Saudi, Shaykh is talking about, who is not from Saudi, and believes that the face is not to be covered, what should she do in this situation? Yes, that's what the Shaykh says. That she should take the opinion and not be strange amongst the people. So when in Saudi, be like the Saudis. Cover. And when you leave Saudi, then do whatever you want. Just like the Saudis.
Let it do, yeah.
Okay. That's what the Shaykh is saying here. And if a woman, then he says, and if a woman in Saudi, who's not Saudi, uncovers her face, then we should reprimand her. We should reprimand her for going against the society. This is the Shaykh's opinion. Okay, this is the Shaykh's opinion. Allah knows best. Yes? So that was things connected to that. He mentions that's outside in the streets of Saudi, but if amongst her own people inside, then she can do whatever she can uncover her face. Okay, that's what the Shaykh says, rahimahullah. Do we agree or disagree with Shaykh? You agree? You don't know?
Not sure about the last
What last part?
she leaves the country, then she should be reprimanded if she.
No. If she's in Saudi, if she's in Saudi, and she uncovers her face, then the Shaykh is saying we should tell her off and force her to cover, because that's what everybody else is doing. That's what he said. We should do as Rome. It's a difficult thing. It's a difficult issue. Because in Saudi things are different than in other countries. And in Saudi the women cover not because they want to cover. Illa man rahim Allah. They cover because it's forced upon them to cover. And as soon as they get out of Saudi, as soon as they leave the aerospace of Saudi, not just they reached another country, no, as soon as they leave it, everything comes off. Illa man rahim Allah. So it's a strange thing. Okay, then the Shaykh moves on. وَالْعِلْمُ لَفْظٌ لِلْعُمُومِ لَمْ يُخَص لِلْفِقْهِ مَفْهُومًا بَلِ الْفِقْهُ أَخَص. So he says, وَالْعِلْمُ لَفْظٌ لِلْعُمُومِ, that the word ilm is a general word, without it being specified. Yes? Knowledge is a general term which encompasses many different things. Yes? Nothing of those knowledges has been specified in the word ilm. Yes? When I say ilm, you know what ilm is. Yes? Under it are many different things. Okay? Each one of them is meant by ilm, but not one specific. That's what it means for a word to be general. Yes? When I say al-insan, what's al-insan? Human, a human being. Okay. That's a general term. How many human beings are there? There's about 7 billion, something like that. Yeah. Each one of those 7 billion come under that word. Yes. But none of them do I mean specifically when I say insan. Yes. I mean them all, but none of them individually. Ilm is in the same way, that there's many different ilms. Yes. And when I say the word ilm, I mean all of them, but none of them specifically. Okay, that's what it means to be general. Okay. Then he says, لِلْفِقْهِ مَفْهُومًا. Fiqh itself has a understanding. What it means. Fiqh, as a word, as a science, it has an understanding of what it means. Yes? But الْفِقْهُ أَخَص. Whereas fiqh in reality is more specific than ilm. So he's saying fiqh is a type of ilm. Fiqh is a type of ilm. But it's a very specific type of ilm. Okay? Why, the Shaykh says, why does the poet, or Imam Al-Jawaini, mention knowledge or talk about knowledge, ilm and fiqh? Why does he mention these two terms? Anybody can remember? Where we derive what from? We derive fiqh from knowledge. Good. So for us to understand the definition of fiqh, we need to understand what is ilm. Because within the definition there is ilm. Okay? So we need to understand what is ilm for us to understand what is fiqh. So he says ilm. What is ilm? Anybody define ilm? Yes, ilm is knowledge in translation. But what is ilm? Ilm is understanding. Fiqh is understanding. In a translation, linguistically, ilm is knowledge. Yes? And fiqh is understanding. Is there a difference between the two? There is. There's a difference between ilm and knowledge and understanding.
There's lots of ulum, not necessarily you understand all of them.
Lots of ulum, but not necessarily understand. But what is ilm? You haven't defined it to me.
Oh, we haven't defined it.
I haven't defined ilm. Huh? Just knowing. So, if you know that Dr. Jamil is 10 years old, is that knowledge? But you know it. So, according to you, that's knowledge.
No, it's not knowledge, that's objective. That's like, it's not objective.
Subjective or objective?
It's not, what you said is not
Knowledge is
objective.
right.
Knowledge is right.
That is correct.
'Cause knowledge has to be-
Knowledge is correct. Okay.
has to be-
Just knowing,
It's just knowing.
knowing your surroundings as well.
Knowing your surroundings.
that goes on.
Knowing your surroundings.
Learning, attaining knowledge.
See how difficult it is to define knowledge.
Ilm nafi and
Yes?
Reality of something for what it really is.
Say it again.
The reality of something for what it really is.
The reality of something for what it is. Okay.
Understand something with the evidence to support that.
Say that again.
Is it to understand something backed up with evidence to support what you're understanding?
Perhaps. The Shaykh says, okay, we'll go back to what the Shaykh says. Is a difficult term to define. He says that mentions the next line of poetry. وَعِلْمُنَا مَعْرِفَةُ الْمَعْلُومِ إِنْ طَابَقَتْ لِوَصْفِ الْمَحْتُومِ لِوَصْفِهِ الْمَحْتُومِ. That our knowledge is knowing something, knowing that which is known, or understanding that which is known in the way that it actually is in reality, like Azim said. So knowing the thing in the way it is in reality, that's knowledge. Anything other than that is not knowledge. Or better to say, knowing something, not knowing that which is known. Because otherwise you're saying knowing something that's known, so you're using knowledge twice, which you can't use in a definition. If you're defining a term, you can't use the same term in its definition. Yes? That's something to do with definitions. You have to use other terms in definition. Here, the Imam, or the poet, has used the same word, he's used ilm and ma'loom. So people have attacked him over this, or refuted him. You know, refutations. Everybody loves refuting everybody else. Yes. People have said that you can't use this and this is not a good definition because you're using the same word in the definition. Or a form of the same word. It would be better to say knowing or knowledge is understanding something. and not understanding knowledge. Yes? Understanding something in the way it is in reality. That would be better. So the Shaykh says, هو إدراك الشيء على ما هو عليه. So understanding something in the way it actually is. So, for example, I know that the book we're studying is no. We're not studying Waraqat, are we? We're studying the poem of Waraqat. That's knowledge. Why? Because it's the reality of what is being done. Yes? If I said we're studying Waraqat, that wouldn't be knowledge. Why? Because it's not the reality. Yeah? Waraqat is a different book. Waraqat is just a book. This is a poem. Okay? So we are all sitting in Masjid Ansar. Is that ilm? According to the definition. No? Yes or no? Somebody said no. So we're not sitting in Masjid Ansar. We are sitting in Masjid Ansar. Unless they change the name. So,
It's knowledge or information.
no, we don't have that difference. We don't have that difference. Otherwise we don't know. Information and knowledge. Khabar.
Khabar may not be ilm.
Khabar is normally ilm. It's normally ilm. Khabar is normally ilm. Okay. But as long as what you know is the reality of the thing, then that is knowledge. If you know it in other than its reality, then it's not knowledge. So the Shaykh says, if we were to ask somebody, when was Ghazwat al-Khandaq? When was the battle of the Khandaq? What is the battle of the Khandaq? Trenches. Or Al-Ahzab. Al-Ahzab al-Khandaq. When was it? Anybody know? 8th year after Hijrah? Anybody else? After the 8th year or the 8th year? The 8th year. You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
70?
I only know it because I've got it in front of me. Otherwise I couldn't remember. Okay. If somebody said, I don't know, is that knowledge?
Yes, if I don't know. That's a reality.
It's not considered to be knowledge. It's considered to be ignorance. Yes? If you say, I don't know, you can't say, now I have knowledge. I have the knowledge that I don't know. That's not considered to be knowledge. It's considered to be ignorance. Yes? If the person gave you an answer but a wrong answer. So he said, it's in the 9th year of Hijrah, in Ramadan, for example, the Shaykh mentions. So both of these are wrong. Was it in Ramadan? Let me check. It wasn't in Ramadan. Okay. Or, as he said, the 8th year, which is wrong as well. Okay. Is that knowledge? No, of course not. But is it ignorance? It's a type of ignorance. It's a type of ignorance. When you say, I don't know, that's ignorance, but simple ignorance. Yes? I just don't know. When you say the wrong answer, you have a double ignorance. First ignorance is that you don't know that you don't know. And second ignorance is that you gave the wrong answer. So it's jahl murakkab. You believe you know, but you don't know. So you don't know that you're ignorant. So that's why they say there's two types of ignorance, even though there's only one type of ilm. Yes? Ilm is only of one type, ignorance is of two types. Ignorance, simple ignorance, that you just don't know. Yes? And then there's jahl murakkab, double ignorance. or compound is the better word, compound ignorance,
You don't
where you
know-
believe you know but you don't know. You believe you know, that's where we get in trouble. Yeah? Where we believe we are correct on everything, and really we're ignorant on most things. Yes? This Jahl al-Murakkab. When was it? It was in in Shawwal, in the 5th year of Hijrah. In Shawwal. Which month is Shawwal? Straight after Ramadan. Which is, which month? Huh? 10th month. 10th month. Shawwal, the 5th year of Hijrah. This is ilm because he said the correct answer in the way it happened. Okay. Then the Shaykh mentions the other type, the opposite of ilm, al-jahl. Okay, we've already mentioned some of that. So he says, وَالْجَهْلُ قُلْ تَصَوَّرُ الشَّيْءَ عَلَى خِلَافِ وَصْفِهِ الَّذِي بِهِ عَلَى وقيل حد الجهل فقد العلم بسيطا أو مركبا قد سميا. Okay, so he said, ignorance, say it is understanding something in the opposite of the way it is in. Okay, understanding it against its reality. وقيل, and it has been said, meaning that there is another opinion. حد الجهل, that the definition of jahl, the definition of ignorance, فقد العلم, is not having knowledge. Is not having knowledge. بسيطا ومركبا, and it's of two types, simple or compound. قد سمي, and that's what they've been called. So again, ilm is of one type, jahl is of two types. Simple ignorance and compound ignorance. What's the difference between simple ignorance and compound ignorance?
Simply you don't know.
Simple ignorance, you just don't know. Compound ignorance,
You don't know that.
you don't know that you don't know.
You think you know, but in reality you don't know.
Ibn al-Qayyim says that simple jahl is simple. The issue is easy. But the big problem, the great musibah, because the musibah is that you don't know that you don't know. That's the musibah. I think it says in Nuniyah. He says, so simple ignorance is that you think that this is a man when it actually is a woman. It's simple ignorance. Oh, no, this is the ignorance based upon the first definition, yeah? The first definition was for you to understand something in the opposite of how it actually is. Yes? That was the first definition. And so his example is that it is, if you, and this can happen a lot these days, you see, you think someone is a male and it actually turned out to be a female, or a female and it turns out to be a male. Yes? In this country, this can happen to anyone. Yes? You can't tell what they are. I think sometimes you need a third class in the middle somewhere. And to the point that the transgender, they have a transgender now, yeah? You have male, female, transgender, or male, female, other. Where do you get other from? And also to the point that I was reading, I think, from the news, that even in primary school, they allow this to go on. That they have kids who one day they turn up as a boy and the next day they turn up as a girl. And they even are allowed to change their name, and the schools have to support this. Huh?
They have posters for it.
They have posters for it as well, mashallah. And they have their own toilets and everything. All of this is encouraged. Instead of saying that this is a problem, and there's some maybe imbalance somewhere in the person's brain, in the chemicals or something, and let's deal with that imbalance, they say, no, let's encourage it. And then, and anybody who speaks against this is labelled whatever they're labelled. They've allowed it, so we can't do anything about it. They've allowed it. Yes. But people should be allowed to say that this is wrong, and especially at that age, where they're children, they don't know right from wrong. Yes. Then the adults should be, what do you call it? The adults should be there to not advise them, but to show them what is correct and what is not correct. Yes. When they become adults, then it's up to them what they're doing within whatever society they're living. Anyway. So on the first definition, there is no simple ignorance. Yeah? Because the first definition said what? People are asleep. Why are you sleeping? I see people, eyes are open, but they are asleep. I remember doing that in university. Your eyes are open, but you're not there. And the lecturer is lecturing, talking to himself. Yes? And that's mainly most of the lecture hall, they're asleep. But their eyes are open. They say, eyes are open and no one's home. Okay. For Usool Al-Fiqh, your eyes need to be open and you need to be there. Otherwise you miss what's going on. Okay. What was the first definition that we mentioned? Remember there's two definitions he mentioned, the two opinions. The first definition of ignorance was what?
What you think it is, but it is opposite.
Okay, so you think, you understand something in opposite to its reality. Yes? If you take this definition, then there is no simple ignorance. So when somebody says, I don't know, that's not ignorance. Because he hasn't understood anything. Yeah? He hasn't thought about it. So we can't call that ignorance. Yes? Only on the second definition can we call that ignorance. Okay? That's what the Shaykh mentions next. And then he says the most famous definition is the second definition, or the definition that is used by most of the scholars is the two different jahls, the simple jahl, simple ignorance, and the what? The compound ignorance. Then the Shaykh moves on and says, بسيطه في كل ما تحت الثرى تركيبه في كل ما تصورا. So he says, it's difficult to translate, the simple of it is connected to everything on the earth. And what he means is everything physical. تركيبه في كل ما تصورا. Whereas in the compound one is connected to understanding which is not physical. Yes? When you understand something and it goes into your brain, yes? Is that something physical now? No. It's non-physical. I can't think of a word for non-physical. Intangible, that's probably it. Intangible or? It's intellectual, yes. It's fikri. It's here. But what's in your mind doesn't have a reality in the real world. Yes? So he's saying that the compound ignorance is connected to those things which are in your mind and not connected to physical things. So this, he says, the Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen says that this is the third definition. How many definitions is he giving for ignorance? Gave one definition for ilm. Okay? Had enough. Now ignorance, they're giving us three different definitions for ignorance. So he's saying on this third definition that the simple ignorance is only connected to physical things. Whereas if the ignorance is connected to understandings or intellectual things, then it becomes compound. So when he says that which is on the earth or under the earth, then he says what can be meant is anything to do with the earth or under the earth. So the issue to do is the dead. Because we don't know that, then this is called Jahl Basit. Simple ignorance. Or the vegetation. And so on. Or the insects. Or anything which is physical on the earth. If we don't know it, then this is simple ignorance. Then he says, as for if we don't know, is the intention obligatory in wudu or not? Is this simple ignorance or compound ignorance? We don't know. In wudu, do we need to have an intention or not? Even though there's a difference of opinion, yes? On the issue itself. But we don't know. Is it obligatory or not? Is this a simple ignorance that we don't know? Or is this on the third definition? Or is this a compound ignorance? Why is it compound ignorance? Is it something physical? What's physical? Your intention is physical. You can hold it in your hand. You can't even hold your wudu in your hand. Yes? When you make wudu, yes? Can you put it in your pocket? No. It's something connected to you which is not physical. Yes? Intention is worse. Okay, so it's not tangible or not physical. Therefore, it's murakkab, it's compound. Yes? And then he mentions أو غير واجبة أو أن القراءة الفاتحة واجبة على المأمون أو غير واجبة. Is the Fatiha, the recitation of Surah Fatiha, obligatory upon the one praying behind the Imam or not obligatory upon the one praying behind the Imam? اختلف الفقهاء. You don't know. So is that compound ignorance or simple ignorance? On this definition, it's compound because it's not physical. On the second definition, it's simple ignorance. You just don't know. Yes. On the first definition, it's neither. Okay. So depending on the definition of jahl, it changes. Yes. And that's the problem. Yes. Because I might use a word and have a specific meaning for it. And when I say it to you, you have a different understanding of what it means. Okay? So I might say that this is halal based upon my understanding of the words that I'm using. And you may say it's haram based upon your understanding of the same word. So you need to agree upon what? Definitions. See the importance of definition. We might argue and beat each other up. And the only problem is that we haven't understood each other's definition. Yes? And if we were to agree on the definition, then we'd have no problem. Yeah? So here, on the first one, it's neither. On the second one, it's simple. On the third one, it's compound. And then he mentions many others. All of these other mentioned. Then he mentions a fourth definition. And he says that this is better. Okay. He says, أن الجهل بسيط عدم الإدراك بالكلية. The simple ignorance is not understanding something at all. Simple ignorance is not understanding something at all. Okay, بالكلية. You don't understand something at all. Whereas جهل مركب إدراك الشيء على خلاف ما هو عليه. Whereas compound ignorance, to understand something in its opposite reality, in the opposite way that it is. That is the easiest and the best of the definitions for jahl. You don't understand something at all? Simple ignorance. That's a problem. That you don't understand. Whereas Murakkab is worse. That you understand it in the opposite of how it actually is. Then he talks about Ghazwat Badr. When was the Battle of Badr? First person says, I don't know. You ask somebody, when was the Battle of Badr? Somebody who doesn't know here? Who doesn't know? Why are you trying to put up your hands if you don't know? Okay, that's simple ignorance. You don't know. I'm not going to shoot you for it. Just don't know. Yes? Okay. If somebody gave me the wrong answer, what did you say second? Okay, he gave me the right answer. Second in the second year of Hijrah. Okay, but somebody said the third year of Hijrah. This would be Jahal Murakkab. Yes, because he understood it in the opposite of how it is, or other than its reality. That seems to be the most easiest of the definitions and the simplest to understand. And then he gives other examples. We're just going to skip the examples. Is Isha still at 7? Oh, do you want to take a break for a few minutes? Yes, I see. Yes. Okay. All right. Have a break for a few minutes, and then we'll carry on. Okay. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Okay. Carry on with al-jahl. That's why I gave you a break. We're still talking about ignorance. The Shaykh asks the question: what is worse, al-jahl al-basit or jahl al-murakkab? What is worse? Why is murakkab worse? Spreading for you might not be spreading anything. You might not open your mouth. You just don't. You know things in the way that they're not. You're not saying anything.
You don't know the truth. You may be acting upon it.
There's some knowledges that you might know opposite, but you don't have. There's no action connected to them. Like the one who believes that Allah is everywhere. He has jahl murakkab, yes, but there's no action connected to that. Yes, there's no action connected to it. But what's worse, if somebody asks him, where is Allah, and he says, I don't know. Or he says, that's the first person. Second person says, no, Allah is everywhere. Who's worse? Second person is worse. Why? They're both wrong, yes? The first one is wrong because he doesn't know. The second one is wrong because he knows the wrong. Which one is worse? Prove it.
He thinks that's right, or he thinks that's
The first one, he doesn't know, you can explain to him, he will know. The other one, then you have to destroy his false knowledge and then give him the
Good,
fact.
that's it. Simple knowledge is easily overcome by learning that which is true. Yeah? Whereas the compound knowledge is a greater hurdle to overcome. You have to first destroy his belief, the compound ignorance, before you can build something new. Until he doesn't accept that he's wrong, until he doesn't accept that he's wrong, you can't do anything with him. Yes? You can whack him against the wall, but that's not going to remove the compound knowledge he has. You have to prove that he's wrong. So that makes it worse. Then he moves on. Okay, he mentions some other things. He mentions a story. Okay, should I mention the story to you? He says there was a man called Toma who believed that he had wisdom, Hakim, and that he sprouted wisdom. Wherever he went, he gave wisdom. But he would give his fatwa without knowledge. And from the wisdom of the fatwas that he used to give was he used to say to people, give sadaqah. But his sadaqah was different. He said, give sadaqah with your daughters. Meaning, marry off your daughters to anybody who's not married, without looking into it. This is what it means to give sadaqah. And he thought that this was something good. Then he mentions the poem, وَمَنْ نَالَ الْعُلُومِ بِغَيْرِ شَيْخٍ يَضِلُّ عَنِ الصِّرَاطِ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. The one who tries to gain knowledge without a scholar, without a teacher, he will be devoid of the straight path, or he will be misguided from the straight path. وَتَلْتَبِسُ الْعُلُومُ عَلَيْهِ حَتَّى, and then all the sciences will be what's taltabis? I don't have any Google here. Taltabis means that they will all not entrapped, they will all get mixed up with each other. Everything will be mixed. Yeah? They will entangle. They will be tangled up. Until the point that he will become more astray than Tawma al-Hakim. So basically, this man who did this, he became an example of misguidance. So anybody who was misguiding people would be called, would be compared to his misguidance. So they say, you are as misguided as Tawma al-Hakim. So you can imagine how stray how much knowledge he had. تصدق بالبنات على الرجال يريد بذاك جنة النعيم. Who used to say, give charity with your daughters upon the men, seeking by it the reward of paradise. Who would do that? I don't think you guys have children. No. For those who have children, give sadaqah to the men by giving them your daughters. Seeking reward of Jannah. So they used to make him an example. And then the Shaykh says that this man Tawma had a donkey. And the donkey doesn't bring any good. Yes? So the poem says, قال حمار حكيم توما, the donkey of Hakim Tawma, the donkey of the wise Tawma, لو قال said, لو أنصف الدهر كنت أركب. If there was any justice in the world, I would be the one riding. Here, I'm changing the translation to make it sense, otherwise it doesn't make sense. If there was only any justice in the world, I would be the rider, because my ignorance is simple, whereas my companion, his ignorance is double-fold. Okay, he's the donkey is being ridden, yeah, by somebody who's more ignorant than it. So he said, if there was justice in this world, because my ignorance is simple, I should be the one on top. Okay. Sometimes you need to have simple ignorance. Sometimes you need to have simple ignorance. And you need to accept that you are ignorant. You need to accept it. When you don't know. Yes? When somebody asks you a question and you don't know the answer, what should you say? I don't know, Allah knows best. Yes? Allah knows best. We mentioned there's a difference of opinion whether you can say Allah and His Messenger know best. Yes? And we have two opinions. One is that you can say Allah and His Messenger know best. And that was the opinion of Shaykh ibn Baz. Meaning that all the knowledge of the religion is known by Allah, of course, but also was known by the Prophet ﷺ. Yes? There's nothing of the religion knowledge of the religion that the Prophet ﷺ didn't know. Yes? But as with regards unseen, future and all these, then those things, no, the Prophet ﷺ didn't know unless Allah told him. Okay? Whereas Ibn Uthaymeen says no. That was only said by the companions. And it's not narrated to us that the rest of the Salaf used to say that. And rather they would say Allah knows best after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. Yeah? Which one seems to be more correct? What do you think? The second one is safer. Yeah? Perhaps Ibn Baz's opinion is correct. Wallahu a'lam. But the second one is safer. Yes? Because Allah knows. Allah knows. You have no problem in when you say Allah knows. The issue is when you say the Prophet ﷺ knows as well. Okay? And perhaps that can lead you to or people believe that the Prophet ﷺ knew the unseen. Yes? And still knows what's going on. Yeah? So perhaps that would lead to that. There was another issue that I wanted to mention. I was just looking at Ikram, yes, which reminded me of something which connected to this. And he asked about in some of the lectures. Sometimes I watch the lectures to see how bad a job I'm doing. So in one of the lectures, he mentioned about the Dajjal and the Dajjal system, and that what was his name? Imran something. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Imran Hussain. Sometimes he says some good things. So I have listened to him sometimes, and sometimes he says some far out there, mashallah, things. So the Dajjal and the Dajjal system based upon the hadith of Tamim ad-Dari. Yes, the hadith Tamim ad-Dari, which is mentioned in Sahih Muslim. And based upon that, it would indicate. Do we know the hadith? It's based upon the hadith of Fatima bint Qais, who she's asked by one of the tabi'een to narrate to him something special that she heard from the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, so she narrates this narration from the Prophet ﷺ, who is narrating from Tamim ad-Dari. So here the Prophet ﷺ is narrating from a companion. Okay, because the Prophet ﷺ has said in this. The hadith says that he called the companions together and he gave them a khutbah. Okay, so the call was made as-salah jami'ah. As-salah jami'ah. When is as-salah jami'ah made? It's made when the Prophet ﷺ wants to give a speech about something and it's not time for prayer. Okay, so they make this announcement as-salah jami'ah. And people know because something's going on, everybody runs to the masjid. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ called everybody with this Salah Jami'ah to the masjid. And then he gave them a khutbah. And in it, he said, I want to mention to you the story which is mentioned by Tamim ad-Dari, which agrees to what I've mentioned to you about the Dajjal. Yeah? With me so far? So the Prophet ﷺ is narrating from a companion about an incident that happened to him, because it's connected to what the Prophet ﷺ has said about the Dajjal. Okay, and we know the narration that Tamim ad-Dari was from the Christians at that time. He was going from Sham, and they went towards Iran, what is now Asfahan, which is now Iran. They got close to an island, and the ship wrecked on the island. Or the sea pushed them onto the island, and in the island first they met a beast that it was so hairy they couldn't tell its front from its back. And then they asked him some questions, and he said to them, go and ask this man in chains. And so they went and they saw a man in chains and chains to his neck, a big person, and basically this was the Dajjal. Yes, and he was chained on that island, and that he would come out at the time that is prescribed for him to come. Yeah? And then they left that island and whatever. But the place of the island is near Iran. And we know that the Jews of Iran, according to the hadith, the Jews of Iran, of Tehran itself, which is Asfahan, will follow the Dajjal. So it's close by them, according to this narration. Yeah? The hadith is mentioned in Muslim, but it's one of the hadiths which has been spoken about in Sahih Muslim. There are narrations in both Bukhari and Muslim which people, other scholars who came later, have criticized. In Bukhari and in Muslim. In Bukhari, the criticism of Bukharis are generally invalid. The criticisms against Bukhari, the narrations in Bukhari, are generally invalid. And Bukhari, the correct opinion, as Ibn Taymiyyah says, the correct opinion with regards to the criticism is with Bukhari. And what he mentions is correct. And Bukhari, mashallah, Bukhari was special. Bukhari was special. And Bukhari is referred back to when it comes to what we talk about ilal, the hidden deficiencies in narrators and narrations. Okay, so this was to do with, but Muslim, when Muslim was criticized, Muslim was the one at fault, and the hadith that Muslim mentioned, these hadiths, they're not very many, but these hadiths were not authentic. From them is this hadith. From this is this hadith of Tamim al-Dari from Fatima ibn Qais. One of the criticisms against this hadith is that Fatima is the only one who narrates it from all of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ called them for Salah Jami'ah, a khutbah, where all of the companions were there. Okay? And she is the only one out of all of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ that narrate this. And it's not narrated anywhere else. That first brings a question mark on the narration. Second is, there was a person called Ibn as-Sayyad. Ibn as-Sayyad. Okay? He fit the descriptions of the Dajjal at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Yes? He had the eye. He had the physical appearance. Even the Prophet ﷺ didn't know if he was a Dajjal or not. In the narrations, even the Prophet ﷺ didn't know if he was a Dajjal or not. Some of the companions swear by Allah that he was the Dajjal. From them is Umar. From them is Ibn Umar. From them is Hudayfa. From them is, who else was it? Hudayfa, Hafsa, and Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. The narration of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri said, if I was to swear on anything, truthful, without fear, then I would swear that Ibn Sayyad is the Dajjal. Okay? How can they say this and believe this if the narration they heard from the Prophet ﷺ that the Dajjal is changed up in an island in somewhere in Iran? It's not possible. It didn't, he came later on, after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, they still carried on saying this. Some of them died, radiyallahu anh, believing that he was the Dajjal. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri had a debate with Ibn Sayyad, where he said, you are the Dajjal. He said to Ibn Sayyad, you are the Dajjal. And he said, how am I the Dajjal? I become Muslim in the end, after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, and the Dajjal won't become Muslim. I made Hajj. I live in the Prophet's city. I have children and the Dajjal will not have children. And one of his sons, I think his name was Amr, is one of the greatest of the Tabi'een. One of the greatest scholars of the Tabi'een. His son Amr, I think his name was Amr. Ibn Abdullah ibn al-Sayyad. All of this indicates that narration is not authentic. It's from the Manakir, the Munkar narrations that Imam Muslim unfortunately mentioned in Sahih Muslim, and Allah knows best. If it is authentic, then it would mean that the Dajjal has existed since the time of the Prophet ﷺ till the time he comes out, which goes against the Quran. وَمَا جَعَلْنَا لِبَشَرٍ مِّن قَبْلِكَ الْخُلْدِ. We have not made for any person to live forever. Yes? This would mean that this Dajjal has been living for centuries and centuries, and this is not something that Allah has allowed for anyone. Yeah. So all of this indicates that this narration is not authentic, even though it is in Sahih Muslim. This is the intricate, detailed study of hadith, where these hadith on the apparent seem authentic, but there's reasons behind them not being authentic, and Allah knows best. We'll stop there, inshallah, and we'll carry on next week. Bismillah. Wa sallallahu